Okay, I think the ayes have it, so let's forestall our questions for, let's set it at 10 more minutes. Deal?
I have really one other question for Jonathan, my dear brother. Bensonhurst, right?
Canarsie.
Canarsie.
But I went to Bensonhurst quite a bit. Caesar's Bay Bazaar.
All right. I can't believe we're in San Antonio. Okay.
Yes.
A question is, we're told in Ezekiel, because we're talking about sacrifices, about Mashiach. In fact, the largest body of Messianic prophecy is found at the end of the book of Ezekiel. It's all over the place, but from Ezekiel 34 to 48 is all Messianic. We're told about the Messiah, who's called the Prince, that he himself will bring a sin offering on behalf of his own unintentional sins and the sins of the people. That's Ezekiel 45, verse 20 and 22. So I ask the question of you, according to the New Testament, Jesus is the final sacrifice, and there will be no further sacrifices. We find that in Romans chapter 6 as an example, or Hebrews chapter 10, verse 18. We're told in the Christian Bible, in Paul's own letters, that Jesus was without sin. He was sinless. So I ask you my one question to you, because I've been answering your questions, and I have a question for you. Why are we told by Ezekiel that the Prince, the Mashiach, it's called the Prince in Tanakh, is going to bring a sin offering because of his own unintentional sins and the unintentional sins of the people, if there's no longer a sacrifice for sin in the Messianic age, and the Messiah, in the view of the church that wants desperately to keep you in that church, says that Jesus never sinned? Just answer that question.
So I would definitely turn it back. If you think of what that sacrifice would mean to us, the overcoming of death, which is what is evident for everybody. And that's why when I look at that, it's the final sacrifice. It's why we learn, or especially in the Anglican Communion, why don't we need the temple anymore? Because it's been finished. God's work satisfied it for us. We are now the temples, and the Spirit of God resides in us. And when we see the effect of God's work and what it accomplishes, there's no longer a need for any future sacrifices.
You're begging the question. That's my question.
Well, it still goes back, and an understanding, or at least for me, that sin still needs to be atoned. The law still needs to be fulfilled. And how much greater to do than have God fulfill it for us? Because the law does require us to complete all things in there.
But if animal sacrifices have ceased, why would it be coming back? Which is right, Hebrews or Ezekiel? They can't both be correct unless you belong to a group called Marcionites. Then you're fine.
No.
You can simply, if you're a Marcionite, you can simply dismiss the Old Testament as an Old Testament. No. If you are a Gnostic Christian, you can dismiss the Hebrew Bible as they did. You never belong to those groups, and therefore you are not off the hook. Jonathan, I think it's time for you to consider coming home to the Jewish faith, to the God of Israel.
This will conclude our cross-examination phase. We will now move on to a question from the audience phase. Which one of you is Jonathan Sheffield? Oh, this one's for you. how does those that follow Christianity explain Zechariah chapter 8, verse 23? The verse would say that there are 10, in the final days, 10 men of the nations will gather around one Jew, take hold of one Jew, and will say, "Take us with you, for we have heard that God is with you."
Now, obviously, between Rabbi Tovia and myself, obviously, we look at the prophetic lens a little differently in terms of, and I always kind of look at it from this standpoint, and I know I go sometimes a lot to history, but when a general goes out and wins the battle, they send out, and similar to what we see with the Gospels, the evangeline, or to go out and proclaim the victory. Obviously, for us in this particular case, the victory is that victory over death and the promise of that eternal life. But that's the announcement. The second part of that is then the arrival of the king. It's been promoted, and the getting ready of the feast. And what we see when we look at the prophetic language, especially in the Tanakh, and this is where Rabbi Tovi and I would disagree, sees everything coming at the same time with the Messiah. Obviously, the way I kind of look at it as, yes, the victory has been done, the Messiah is here, but the king still needs to come and come back to celebrate with the victory. So, I know Rabbi Tovi will go into it obviously a little differently, but we, as speaking from the Christian side, we look at those two events as separate. The Messiah is coming back, so the victory has been won. So you won battle, and then the feast with the king would come second.
Rabbi, 2 minutes.
Okay, the heart of the question is, Zechariah 8 is entirely messianic, and we are told that at the end of days, something is going to happen. Now, Judaism, Orthodox Judaism, and Christianity can't both be true. One of them is correct, and the other is not. If Christianity is true, then being an Orthodox Jew is the motherlode of bad ideas. Conversely, if Christianity is false, then every one of you must join the Jewish people. Okay? If we're wrong about Jesus, then when he makes his second coming, the Jews are going, "Oh, I'm so sorry, we just blew that completely on that Trinity thing. I could have had a V8. So, as it turns out, we know how this ends. We know the score. Wouldn't it be wonderful in the sports betting? We actually know what's going to happen, and that is what Zechariah 8:23 says. At the end of days, 10 of the people of the nations of the world will grab the shirt of a Jew and say, Nelcha imochem, ki shamanu Elohim imochem. Those who speak Hebrew, imochem is plural, it's not one. That means at the end of days, the non-Jews will come to the Jew and say, take us with you because we've heard that God is with you. If we're wrong about Jesus and the Trinity, why would they be coming to us? This is not an inference. The prophet Zechariah is proclaiming that Judaism will be vindicated at the end of days and the non-Jews will get it. That's the point of the question. Excellent.
Rabbi Singer, according to Daniel 9 and Isaiah 53, the Messiah was prophesied to come before the destruction of the second temple and to suffer on behalf of his people, At the same time, the prophets describe Israel's regathering as something led by the Messiah and marked by spiritual renewal, just as a political return. So how do you reconcile modern Zionism as a fulfillment of prophecy if the Messiah has not yet come? If he has come, how do we account for the detailed prophetic timeline that appears to have already passed?
There's not a single place in Isaiah 53 or Daniel chapter 9 that says that the Messiah must come for the destruction of the second temple. The questioner inserted that there. Modern religious Zionism is founded on explicit scriptures in the Hebrew Bible. Zechariah is not an easy book to understand, but one chapter is, if you don't know it, God's going to ask you why you never read it. Zechariah chapter 12, we're told that prior to the coming of the Messiah, because there's still a war, Israel, the Jews will return back to Israel, Jerusalem will be liberated, nations who come up against Jerusalem will be destroyed, Jerusalem will be a heavy, burdensome stone to all those who come against it. And be in those days that I will destroy all the nations that come up against Jerusalem. So the Jews have returned back to the land of Israel before the Messiah comes, and then you have a catastrophe. The Jewish people turn to God, and that brings the Messiah, the son of David. That's where Zionism is. Isaiah 53 is speaking about the nation of Israel, as we're told in Isaiah 41, verse 8 and 9, 44, verse 1, 44, verse 21, 45, verse 4, 48, verse 20, and 49, verse 3. We're told explicitly that the servant is the nation of Israel, and the first 8 passages have nothing to do with the second temple, but it's a soliloquy of what the nations will say at the end of the days before, when they realize that the Jews all along were correct, and they will conclude that Jewish suffering triggered their repentance. Many people in this room were transformed by what occurred on October 7th. None of us will be the same people we were on October 6th, nearly 2 years ago. So there's everything in there is pointing to the nation of Israel returning to the land before the Messiah comes. Wars rage, but God will make even the weakest of the Jews strong like the angels, even like David. See Zechariah chapter 12, verse 8 and 9. And there's much more to this, but I'll just leave it right there, because I don't want to extend my 4 minutes.
Okay. Mr. Sheffield.
And obviously, this is a very interesting time in history for the people of Israel. Obviously, it's difficult to understand a lot of the prophecies, and we're trying to make sense and look at what's happening in that period. For me, when I look at this particular question, some of the things that come to mind is, first, Israel is without a king. Kind of started off, when I talked about Moses, it was kind of that theocracy at the very beginning. We get the judges, we get the kings, and now in the first century, that's taken away. Then we have the purported sign, or at least what's alleged out there of the coming of the Messiah. And then we also have the prophecy, as a number in the Christian community will tie back to, with the destruction of the temple. And we obviously see that with Vespasian's son Titus coming in, which goes back to some of my initial points. Is this the work of the God of Israel? And is it testifying to his work? And is it revealing its prophecy? Obviously, I would say yes. These are the visible signs from God that we can witness, that are visible. Does this help interpret those prophecies? And I would say yes. The temple's destroyed. We have the sign. or at least the alleged sign that the Messiah has come, and many people did believe. God has taken away the physical king of Israel. Does this all point to the prophecy with these historical events? And that's where I would say yes.
Rabbi Singer, as a Noahide, is it okay for me to say Kaddish for my friends and family that have passed?
Yes. If a person is, a Noahide is an anachronism. I wish we would do away with that word. It's okay if you know what it means. It means that you've converted to Judaism, the faith of Israel, but you have not joined the nation of Israel. It's really an unfortunate term because it's misleading. It's like Judaism 1.0. It isn't. It's full Judaism. If a Noahide loses, God forbid, an immediate family member, he should go into a synagogue where there are 10 religious Jews and quietly say the Kaddish, which doesn't speak about death, but speaks about the greatness and sovereignty of God, quietly, and think about some wonderful thing that your mom inspired you with during your life to bring you to the God of Israel. So while you wouldn't be counted among the 10, the quorum, I think it would elevate the soul of the person who's passed. I will take 30 seconds just to add, why would this ever work? So there's an idea that if I inspire somebody to repent and perform mitzvot, then I am elevating that person, but I receive annuities, reward for that in some way. If I can think of a way that my mom, break that, full break. My mom should be, 120. If I can think of the so many ways my father, who just passed away about 6 months ago, inspired me in my life to do the work that I'm doing, it gives him an aliyas neshama. So therefore, I think it would be a very good idea for B'nai Noach to go into an Orthodox synagogue, and when the Mortis Kasha said, to quietly say the Kaddish, which has nothing to do with death, but simply that God is sovereign and his greatness cannot be estimated.
Okay. All right. For Mr. Sheffield, if Jesus died on Good Friday and rose from the grave on Easter Sunday, how was he in the tomb for 3 days and 3 nights as Jonah was in the fish?
Good luck.
Yeah.
You're on your own. Don't look to me. I'm not getting it.
No, that is a good question. I know that comes up. Obviously, we do have, from my perspective, 4 independent vantage points that we're getting with the Gospels. John Chrysostom, who was a
Anti-Semite.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, he was.
He's a horrible. He was like, and David Duke said,
Yeah.
okay, no, I'm kidding.
Along with the rest of the Greek Orthodox Church.
To have him removed for interrupting.
Yes, John. One of the perspectives he puts on the Gospels, where we see a lot of value in them, is yes, we do have 4 independent vantage points that are coming, and it does speak to this notion, of what they're reporting, the consistency of it, and then the differences, which I may get asked later on the number of differences. Now, what we see in a normal court of law, and John Chrysostom speaks to this at length in his homilies on Matthew, and he talks about these differences. But when we're looking at investigating a number of facts, and we get a number of witnesses, and in this case for the Gospels, we have 4, we're going to find differences from the vantage points that they have. And now what we would hope not to see is if they agreed in everything, or what it appears like it's a conspiracy, because everything is adding up. Everything that they're saying is correct. Now, what we're getting in that perspective, referring to Jesus, Jesus is referring to the sign of Jonah. Obviously, Friday, if you're counting that as one day, second or third. While, yes, we can question the 3 days, I think the biggest thing, while that is being reported, the question is, did it happen? And if the resurrection did occur when Jesus was making that prophet, and remember, he's referring back to Jonah into that effort. If we see that, then did it fulfill the requirement of fulfilling? Now, I get from the vantage point of the Gospels if it's not reconciling, but the question that we need to really see there is, did it actually happen? Because if it did, then it does explain itself.
According to none of the four Gospels was Jesus in the tomb for 3 nights. According to one of those Gospels, Jesus was in the tomb for 2 nights and 2 days. That's John. And the Synoptic Gospels, Jesus was in the tomb for 3 days and 2 nights. So you're actually taking a view that makes it more difficult. I believe that Matthew and Luke relied on Mark. We don't have independent witnesses, but rather they're just reliant on each other. But I'm happy to concede it all, because rather than solving the problem, you're intensifying the problem. There is no 3 days and 3 nights according to any of the Gospels, and if they're independent, then you have a bigger problem, not a smaller problem.
Rabbi Singer, John refers to Jesus as the Passover lamb. In Exodus 12, it says, take a lamb or a kid for the offering. Why is it only referred to as the Passover lamb? Would it be more accurate to refer to Jesus as the Passover kid or the Passover goat?
So I don't think there's a distinction of any note, and I don't think Jonathan will disagree on that point. The error is that somehow the Passover lamb atoned for sin. The original Passover lamb was sacrificed by people that trusted in the God of Israel and did not fear the Egyptian army. I recall Exodus chapter 8, where Pharaoh asked Moses, why in the world do you have to go into the wilderness to bring your offering? Why don't you just offer it right here in Egypt? And Moses correctly said, because this animal is considered a god by you, and you'll kill us all if we do that. Okay, so the Passover lamb was an offering that people who were righteous, who trusted in God, defied the Egyptian law, that you couldn't molest this god of the Egyptians, and were willing to bring the offering. So, therefore, the notion that the Passover lamb was brought for sin is only found from the Gospels, only found in the book of John. It's not found in the Synoptic Gospels. It's also found in Paul's letter in 1 Corinthians 5:7 as an example. But the whole thing doesn't make sense. None of it makes sense, but if you wanted to use an example, you'd say the Yom Kippur offering was an offering for sin, okay? We'll just suspend that an animal's on a human, whatever. But it actually doesn't say that anywhere. So they got the wrong animal, the wrong holiday, and it's all smushed together, and then they throw in the lulav in the middle for saying Hoshana. It's like asking the question, what happens if Passover comes out on Sukkot? Do you have to have a Seder inside of a Sukkah? Well, that can't happen. So what I'm saying is that it's, I don't want to say silly, but it is a silly argument, because the Passover lamb had nothing to do with sin. but it does give us insight into how the author of John altered the date of the crucifixion to the eve of Passover in order to comport with his theology that Jesus is the Lamb, John 1:29, John 1:36.
Yeah, and I know this question goes back to the atonement. And, you know, what I was trying to kind of show, and we see this throughout the Tanakh, you know, and I obviously wanted to start it with Adam and Eve, the covering. And that's why when we look at Jesus and that sacrifice, and we're looking at what was done in Egypt, we're all applying it, or at least on the Christian side, to that covering, that atonement that's being made. And for me, we see this constant theme throughout the Tanakh, starting with Adam, obviously looking over at the Passover, seeing Moses in the cleft, even the kippur, the covering. We see this constant concept being applied. So, someone's, I guess, timer went off. You know, so this is where I see that consistency, where we're drawing out this reference of an atonement. And when we're looking back throughout the Tanakh, I mean, obviously the Passover is one, but we see a number of illustrations going back to Adam and Moses of this concept of this covering to kind of shield us from God's wrath. That's what I have to say.
My prophecy was that this would end at 8 p.m. and it's 8 p.m. So I am a prophet now. Is that correct? I would like to thank. Did you see that look I got? I mean, you could have at least not been quite as brutal. But would like to thank both Rabbi Singer, who came for a long way away, Jonathan Sheffield, who has been the most gracious host of my entire life. And at this point, we'll conclude the debate part. If you bought VIP tickets, you are invited to come up to the front, and some more discussion, a little more intimate discussion will continue. Do you gentlemen want to take a quick break?
No, I really want to just express my deep love for Jonathan. Our sages tell us that there was no greater friendship than that between a man named David and a man named Jonathan. And I love you very much, dear brother. I came a long way to the United States. It's the first speaking engagements I took since my father's passing. I pray that your mother will have a Aliyas Neshama, her soul raised. I want you home. I want you to come home to the God of Israel. And I hope you'll take to heart the thoughts that were expressed here today. And I want to express my deep gratitude to you for extending this welcome. And I thank HaKadosh Baruch Hu for bringing us together. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. If you enjoyed this program, please like and subscribe.
אדון עולם אשר מלך בטרם כל יציר נברא ואת נעשה בחפצו כל